ANDIZI, meaning I will not come down. A stubborn focus on building a great life. Written and read by Beauty Kotela. Chapter 4, Part 2, Your Sanballat. When the devil comes and questions your abilities, I commend to you the response of Nehemiah, which reminds me of the response of Christ as stated in the Bible. He answered them not a word. Watch Nehemiah's response to this second jab. Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn their reproach on their own heads and give them as plunder to a land of captivity. Do not cover their iniquity and do not let their sin be blotted out from before you, for they have provoked you to anger before the builders. Not a word to the enemy, but straight to the Father. Hear, O God, and deal with them. In other words, be still and know that I am God. This phase, the insecurity about your abilities, is one that we all need to pay close attention to. There are many people, individuals, many companies, marriages, communities, etc., which now lie in ruins because they did not make it through this stage. And the enemy comes at us in different ways. Many of us pursue tertiary studies, perhaps going against the negative voices saying, who do you think you are? Who's going to pay for you? But you did start. But somewhere along the way, you experienced either academic failure or financial failure or both, and you stopped and never went back. And in your quiet moments, you wonder what would have happened if you had pushed through. Where would you be now and what your life would look like? If that is you, you can start again, rebuild. Some of us pushed through the negative voices and all the startup challenges, registered a business and started operations, but something happened along the way. You were either hit by a dry spell, bad financial decisions, economic downturn, or some or other challenge, and the business went down. But the thought and idea of running your own business has never left you. You find yourself fantasizing and imagining what it would be like had you pushed through. You might need to re-strategize, but why not start again? For another, it is in the area of their relationships, whether romantic or sibling or parent-child relationships. Here too, as long as the people are still alive, there is still an opportunity. It may not necessarily be the same marriage, but you can marry again. Take the lessons learned from that marriage and implement them in this one, while working to fix the relationship with your ex-spouse so that you do not carry that negative energy in your spirit. In other words, our past failures, our current internal and external weaknesses are some of the tools that the enemy uses in questioning our abilities to carry out our building project. The point I'm making is that regardless of your past failures and current weaknesses, God has called you and approved you. Focus on Him and not the detractors. If you fail to take your focus away from the enemy and focus on rebuilding, you run a huge risk of discouragement and stopping, and nothing would make the enemy happier and making you more miserable. A fable is told of a turtle who had made a friendship with the migrating birds. True to their nature, when the winter season came, the birds got ready to migrate to a place where it was warm. The turtle was so sad and he did not want to be separated from his friends. So the group of them devised a plan. The birds would fly carrying a stick in their beaks, and the turtle, using his mouth, would hold on to the stick and they would all fly together. So the journey began. The birds flying with the stick in their beaks and the turtle hanging on nicely. On their journey, they flew past several villages, and in this one village, a group of boys noticed this strange phenomenon of a turtle flying. So they started mocking and laughing and questioning. I guess the turtle had heard far too much. He decided he was going to give the boys a piece of his mind. How dare they question his identity and his ability to fly? So he opened his mouth to speak. The same mouth that he was using to hold on to the stick and thus be able to fly. Well, the rest is history. He did not even finish one sentence to the boys. He fell to the ground, cracked his shell, and died. Suppose he had kept quiet. He would have eventually flown past the boys and their voices would have faded. He would continue to fly and would reach the destination. The moral of the story: 1. The energy you need to fend off the detractors is the same energy you need to fly. 2, it is dangerous and even fatal to pay too much attention to the enemy. Let them talk. Keep flying. Nehemiah continues, so we rebuilt the wall. Nehemiah 4 verse 6. The enemy spoke, we were hurt by that, yes, but we did not respond to them. We handed them over to God and rebuilt the wall. In fact, the more they were mocked, the harder they worked. In other words, they decided to use the mocking and the threats, the pain associated with that, as fuel to drive them to work even harder. So when they hate you for working, work double time. When they hate you for making a certain amount of money, make even more. Do more. Use the rocks that they are throwing as stepping stones towards your destiny. You see, we have to work so hard, pursue our holy discomfort so strongly that the enemy gets to a point of rage. Easy, not at all, but highly possible with God on our side. At this point, Sanballat simply could not stand the courage of these guys. The enemy realized that the more they spoke badly and intimidated these guys, the better they did. They would have to stop them immediately, dead in their tracks. Watch their next step, as shown in Nehemiah 4 verse 7 to 8. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites heard that the repair work on the Jerusalem wall was progressing and that its breaches were being repaired, they flew into a rage. So they all conspired together to invade and fight against Jerusalem, creating confusion there. Now the enemy was angry. It seemed that the war of words had been ineffective, and now they had to intensify the attack, and they were going to be physical. In other words, the detractors noticed that the mocking, the criticizing, the backchatting had not helped. Now they had to devise a plan to bring them down. That is the gist of the book, this book. From the moment you were born to the moment you will close your eyes in death, there is a calling on your life for you to fulfill. There is nothing that you are here to build. There is something that you are here to build. The enemy also knows this, and he has made it his business to bring you down. What are you going to do? So Sanballat sent a message to the relentlessly building Nehemiah. Come, let us meet together among the villages in the plain of Ono. But they thought to do them harm. Nehemiah 6 verse 2. This time Nehemiah decided to respond directly, and I absolutely love his response. In fact, Nehemiah's response forms part of the title of this book. It is this response that led to the writing of this book. Listen to what he says, Nehemiah 6 verse 3. I am doing great work so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave it and go down to you? In other words, I am engaged in important work, a great endeavor, an important project. I will not come down. In my language, we say ANDIZI. So if we are going to live out the life that God has called us to do, we've got to stay up there. We have got to keep building until they take a gun and shoot us down. I am not coming down. Why? Because I am doing the good work of building my family, the great work of raising my children, the good work of excelling in my job, the good work of serving in my community, the good work of teaching in my neighborhood, feeding the hungry, praying and interceding for God's people, building marriage. I am doing the good work of the restoration and reconstruction of Africa. I am not coming down. ANDIZI. And then Nehemiah asks the question. It's a rhetorical question, and there's power in this question. He says, why should the work stop while I leave it to go down to you? Guys, we've got to choose. You can either respond to Sanballat or keep building, but you can't do both. You can't build effectively and also deal effectively with the detractors. You can't be looking down there and still be building up here. You have to focus on one or the other. The kind of work that God is calling us to do is work of a higher standard. The kind of calling that we have is a higher calling. You can't be looking down and attending to things down there while at the same time staying up here and be building. Sooner or later, one of them will win. And if you are not careful, the force of gravity will have the final say. Think about the number of times you got into a fight, whether you won it or not, but you incurred serious losses by choosing to get involved in that fight. So Nehemiah says, why should the work stop while I go down to attend to your pettiness? In other words, Nehemiah knew that what the enemy was up to. He knew that the enemy was plotting to kill him. He also knew that killing him was not even the ultimate aim, but the aim of the enemy was to get them to stop building. If you listen carefully to Nehemiah's response, he is not saying, why should I come down and allow myself to be killed? Although he knows that death will be his fate if he comes down, he knows something deeper. He knows that the enemy is less interested in killing him, but more interested in stopping him from building. The building project is a bigger threat, and that is why the enemy is after him. I make this point to open our eyes. The enemy is not so much after you, but he is after whatever it is that you are building, and he knows that he has to go through you to get to it. So whether you are building your career, your family, your business, your community, whatever it is that you are building, know that the opposition and the challenges you are facing are not personal. The ultimate aim of the enemy is stop you from that building project. He will throw everything at you. Do not get distracted. Like Nehemiah, refuse to have your attention shifted away from the great work of building. Refuse to allow the work to stop while you attend to the enemy. Be stubborn. Be relentless. Build. Rebuild. Now, I wish I can say to you that after Nehemiah said, I am not coming down, in other words, ANDIZI, that Sanballat left Nehemiah alone. Sadly, no. The Bible says that 4 times they sent the same message, and each time Nehemiah gave them the same response, ANDIZI, I'm doing great work, why should the work stop? When they couldn't get him to come down that way, the enemy plotted to attack them. But God revealed their plan to the Jews, and the Jews devised an amazing strategy in response. The strategic response will be discussed in the later section of this book. However, I can tell you some good news. Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem never really stop. The detractors, the opposition, internal or external, never really goes away. So if you are waiting for the storm to pass, for smooth seas for you to sail, you will never sail, or you will never start, or you will start and stop and start and stop. One day you will stop for good. The enemy does not stop, my friend, because he is performing his mission. The thief comes to steal, to kill, and destroy, as told in the book of John 10, verse 10. Sadly, he will always find willing agents to do his dirty work. Even sadder is that we sometimes become those agents, our own worst enemy, because we give him a portion of our minds to carry out his call downs. So do not spend time trying to fix people that are hating you. I'm not saying don't reconcile, but please don't spend time trying to fix the devil's plan. Keep building. Why should the work stop? Internal Sanballat. And so the story continues, and eventually the walls of Jerusalem get rebuilt. But before we learn of how we actually pulled the building project off, let's take this off-ramp. I've been deliberate in talking about a Sanballat that is out there, and my question was, who is your Sanballat? The truth is, a Sanballat that is out there is powerful, is strong, can hurt you. But the impact of an external Sanballat is nothing compared to the impact of an internal Sanballat. He is the reason why we do not succeed in some of the things that God has planted in our hearts. Year after year, God keeps giving you this plan and you do not fulfill it. The reason why we do not succeed is not so much the external Sanballat, but it is the internal Sanballat. In the book Steps to Christ, Ellen White says, the greatest battle ever fought is a warfare against self, close quote. It is easier to speak to an enemy that you can see. It's easier to resist an enemy that is out there that you can see. There's something about it that even gives you an adrenaline rush. And as you resist, you can see the response in them and you gain energy from that. But the worst is the enemy within. The worst fights for me, where I lose almost all the time, is where beauty fights with beauty. When something inside of me comes up as I am busy pursuing God and it threatens to stop me, that thing tends to be more effective than the things outside. So yes, we will talk about the who of Sanballat, but the biggest Sanballats to fight are the ones raging war within each and every one of us, and those have a better chance of bringing us down. Please take note. The external and the internal Sanballat come from one source, one person. The devil is the main instigator. So before I leave external Sanballat, don't go out there labeling people. Label the devil behind them. It is the devil that infuses people with a spirit of jealousy and causes them to inflict harm on others. In fact, there may even be a time where you yourself, in a moment of weakness, have been a Sanballat in someone else's life. So don't go labeling people as Sanballat or Tobiah. In fact, you can pray for them. The Bible implores us to love our enemies and pray for them that persecute us. Matthew 5:44. Why should we pray for them? We pray because we realize that they too are the victims of the enemy and thus need prayers. I know it's not easy, but pray for them because the devil hates them more than he hates you. In fact, if the devil uses someone to inflict pain on you, he hates you. But the one he is using to do his dirty work, he loathes. He hates them even more than you. Spare a thought for them. So the guy that is behind the Sanballats, internal and external, is the devil himself. That is the guy to fight. I'm not saying allow the external Sanballat to walk all over you, but you are only as victorious as you win the battle within you. Here is the problem with the internal Sanballat. You carry it with you wherever you go. You go to Germany, it comes up. You go to Botswana, Lesotho, as it happened with me, it goes with you. For example, smallness is how the who do you think you are strategy unfolds in my life. I often shrink from approaching those I consider as very important people, or from taking my rightful place in what I believe to be a great project. My internal reasoning is that such is reserved for a certain race and a certain class of people, and not for little girls from the dusty streets of Mnash. On the other hand, this same false identity of the dusty streets of Ngacha sometimes gives me false security where I achieve little and it seems great because my point of reference is so low, the dusty streets of Ngacha. I have to keep challenging and questioning myself about this until I prevail, because at the feet of the cross, all come from God and are not defined by our village or social class or skin color. And our success will be judged based on what we made with what we were given. So I'm going to ask you, what are your internal Sanballats? What are the things that keep coming up inside of you, causing you to be paralyzed when you think of building or rebuilding? Or what are the things that come up in your spirit, and when they do, they are calling you to put your building tools down and simply give up the good work and come down to their level? Answer that. Attend to that. Deal with that. Fix that, hand it over to God, and you are good to go. You are ready to carry on the great project of building or rebuilding your life. Neglect that and just rebuild, you will build heavy and you will build blindsided. And before you know it, the force of gravity will prevail and you will be down. Take the invitation of Jesus given in Matthew 11, verse 28 to 30. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Close quote. In other words, Jesus says, let me do the heavy lifting. You give me your burden. Take my yoke, my choose. Focus on building. From this point onwards, our answers to the what of your Sanballat may vary according to several factors like our upbringing, our level of education, social and financial status. Even the color of your skin may create different internal Sanballats for different people. But in the second section of this book, I will delve deeper into the Sanballats that are common to most people, sharing from some of my personal experiences as well as observations from my environment and my community. In the meantime, let us on-ramp again to the building project and ask another question. So what are you building?